Good evening, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, coming to you right now at a time later than usual. It's 10:30 right now, Eastern Standard Time, as we're doing the show. We got a ton to talk about, though, in the world of sports. Going to try and bring it to you as you maybe wind down your day, get ready for bed. We actually do have a couple games going on right now. I'll give you my prediction prior to them beginning at the end of the show. But we'll do Week 15 recap at the end. We'll talk about Steelers-Eagles to start the show. Not a great result for my Steelers, to say the very least. Get into that in just a second. Why I, as a very loyal Detroit Lions supporter, am starting to get a bit nervous. Okay, with all the injuries that's accumulated, losing to Buffalo, why Josh Allen, I'm willing to say, is one of the three greatest talents in the history of the quarterback position. Get into that in about 12 minutes. Also talk about Green Bay. I'm actually going to walk back a statement I made about 10 days ago regarding the Green Bay Packers' ability to win a championship. Get into that. What else we got on the show? Mahomes going down for the Kansas City Chiefs. What I think they should do, depending on what the severity of the injury is moving forward. Get to that in about 35 to 40 minutes from now. But we are glad you are with us on a late night, so we'll try and give you the best show that we can. Again, I am actually, as it just so happens to be, in Disney World right now, so wanted to try and bring you the show live. There was some conflicts in the morning that I usually do pre-recorded shows. You get the point. Let's get into the action. But first, so listen, disappointing result for my Steelers. That's putting it mildly. But Philadelphia takes out Pittsburgh 27-13 in Philadelphia. Doing so, by the way, and we'll get into the specifics of what happened the second half later, but doing so in a second half where the Steelers ran 11 plays. The Philadelphia Eagles had 3 drives in a second half, a halftime in which they led by only 4 points. Just to put it right there. They burned 7 minutes 8 seconds on their first drive. Okay, next drive burned 6.5 minutes, 6 minutes 33 seconds to be exact. And the last drive, the game backed up at their own 3-yard line with Pittsburgh having all 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. They burned the last 10:29 out the game, 10.5 minutes, and Russell Wilson never got to touch the ball from there. I'm not saying we would have come back to win it. I'm just saying would have liked to see a little bit more from the defense. But I'll say this about Philadelphia, because I've been a noted Eagles skeptic going back to the offseason. There's no question about that. I worried about whether this defense could be fixed after what I thought was a truly abysmal one last year, particularly in the pass game, just an inability to stop anything whatsoever in the pass game against other teams. Vic Fangio's fixed that. You talk about offensively. Here's what I want to give the Eagles a lot of credit on. And a guy I've been arguably more critical of than Nick Sirianni, and we'll get to Sirianni later in the segment, but Kellen Moore. So, and again, maybe this is just a one-week fix. I don't know. Maybe he'll be able to appease A.J. Brown the rest of the season. But did you notice what Philadelphia is doing over the course of that football game? Listen, Pittsburgh's great at stopping the run. That's kind of Steelers football at its finest. Stop the run the football. But Saquon Barkley had 65 yards and 19 carries. He didn't bust any big runs. Matter of fact, I'd argue Jalen Hurts was more effective with his legs at times, at least it felt that way, than Saquon was. So you talk about that. You talk about the fact that in a week where everything's going right for the Eagles. They've won 9 games in a row. All the things that are going Philadelphia's way. The defense is balling. Jalen Hurts doesn't turn the football over. Saquon might be MVP. And A.J. Brown's got a problem with the passing game. It's like, oh my God, is the Eagles season about to come to an end the same way it did last year? Get off to a hot start, then there's some drama, then there's a complete and utter collapse, and now the coach's job is on the line. Let's see. Jalen Hurts in this game had 25 completions. 18 of those went to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So you could tell like a big portion of the game plan. Now, some of this is that I love me some Joey Porter Jr. with my Steelers. I think he's got a bright future ahead. He's got the physical capabilities, the intangibles. He's coached by Mike Tomlin. That doesn't exactly hurt you as a defensive player, but he's having a rough stretch of football right now, and there's no question. A.J. Brown absolutely cooked him for 60 minutes. There's just no other way around it. Devontae Smith did his thing as well. That's what the Steelers did for 60 minutes, or the Eagles did for 60 minutes over the course of that football game. But I give Philadelphia credit. And it's why I won't reveal Bryce's best 10 until Wednesday. We do that segment on Wednesdays. But Philadelphia, from what I've seen through the first 15 weeks of the season, 14 games that they've played, they're the most complete team of football. Minnesota, you can make that case as well. To a lesser degree, Pittsburgh, Kansas City. I'll get to Buffalo. I think Buffalo's great. I don't know if they're as well-rounded as some of these other teams. It feels like more of a Josh Allen superhero stunt show at times. But Philadelphia can beat you 17 different ways, it feels like. Jalen Hurts can run. Jalen Hurts can throw the football if he has got a good pocket, which is often because Philadelphia's offensive line is phenomenal. Amazing. You lose Jason Kelce, who was one of the greatest centers ever, and seemed like the offensive line has in some ways gotten better. Some of that's Saquon Barkley, but give credit to Philly, especially their coaching staff in that regard as well. They've got one of the 5 best receivers in the sport, A.J. Brown. They've got a guy I've called the best number 2 receiver in the NFL, Devontae Smith, with respect to guys like Jalen Waddle and Cooper Kupp. Devontae Smith's a Heisman winner. He has been successful in the league. Okay, they got a good tight end, Goddard. Defensively, matter of fact, we could show you what they did in the second half against Pittsburgh. Great graphic here that my man Alfred put together. I mean, Pittsburgh did nothing. 163 total yards for the Steelers, and they had the ball for 20 minutes. Philadelphia literally doubled Pittsburgh in time of possession, and then we could show you what Philadelphia's done over the course of the season. Let's see. They give up the fewest points, fewest yards, fewest pass yards, 7th fewest rush yards, and they are near it in the top 10 in terms of turnovers forced. So they can take the ball away from you. You don't get a lot of yards against them. They don't give up a lot of points. The secondary's been excellent. Getting DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell has helped tremendously. Okay, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the pass rush. Interior, Jalen Carter committed a terrible penalty, but Jalen Carter abused Pittsburgh over the course of that game. Steelers couldn't do anything in the run game, which is really where they've excelled, putting Russell Wilson in positions to where he doesn't have to make big tight window throws on 3rd and 9. Love Russell. That's not the player he is at this stage of his career. And so you talk about the multiple different ways. If you told me, let's say Philadelphia. Okay, let's say for the sake of argument, they get the 2 seed, because it feels like the NFC North winner, even with Detroit losing, it feels like the NFC North winner is probably going to get the 1 seed. Philadelphia very well may. Let's just say the playoffs hold as is. Philly's the 2 seed. If you told me their first game, Philadelphia played an opponent who was completely outmatched, and they won 38-17. Yeah, I could see that. And if you told me they won a game in the divisional round against a better team, obviously, one of the final 4 teams in the NFC. If you told me they won 17-14, wouldn't be surprised either. Because that's what they can do defensively. Offensively, they can, again, yesterday scored 27, but they were grinding the clock, using the run game. Jalen Hurts, play action. He had the turnover early, but by and large played relatively clean football. No, I mean, I guess the only question is, and I still hold this question because we've seen it multiple times, even in this win streak, is these 4th down calls by Nick Sirianni. Do we trust him? But I give Sirianni credit. I kind of put him on the spot last week on Wednesday's show. My thing was, okay, you've been a successful coach of this league. Nobody's going to deny that. At the same time, there's 2 categories of coaches. I talked about this last week. There's schemers. I call them schemers. You talk about guys like Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, guys like that, Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. And then there's motivators / culture builders, Mike Tomlin, Dan Campbell, guys like that, Jim Harbaugh. I think Sean McVay is like a healthy medium schemer who is also a culture builder. You can say the same to a certain degree about Andy Reid, who's the best coach of football. Sirianni's clearly not a schemer. Okay, we saw him have to give up play calling duties his first season as the head coach in Philly to, in my mind, a brilliant offensive mind is Shane Steichen, who's working with nothing at the quarterback position in Indianapolis. But he had to relinquish play calling duties. So at that point, then you have to become a culture guy. And with the A.J. Brown fiasco, how is he going to be able to reel it back in a way that obviously respect to him, but he couldn't do that last year when Philly started 10-1 and then just fell apart, went 1-6 down the stretch, and then you can make a case quitting their playoff loss to Tampa. Chaotic week, didn't panic. We're playing a great Steelers team. We're at home. We feel like we've got some matchups that we can expose, and they did for 60 minutes. I mean, Pittsburgh, we got the touchdown with Russ to Freiermuth, but once the fumble there in the 3rd quarter after Philadelphia went up by 7, I'm like, this team is not built to play from behind against a team like Philly that could just grind the clock, keep the ball away from you. And listen, for my Steelers, there's no reason to panic. If there's any reason to worry, it's TJ Watt. But again, according to this report, Brooke Pryor from ESPN has said that Mike Tomlin is optimistic about TJ Watt's availability this Saturday against Baltimore, which is, I can make a case, the game for the Steelers. You win that, the division is over. You got the AFC North. You got a at least one home game in the first round of the playoffs. Rather, what do you do from there? We'll see. But the big question for Pittsburgh, and this is going to be huge. Is that bad man number 14 back? Is GP? Is George Pickens back? If Pickens is back, Steelers are going to be just fine. No reason to panic. If not, could be a problem against the Ravens. But really, really impressed by Philadelphia. Listen, I watched that game as a Steelers fan. It's like, yeah, I don't think this is a Tomlin problem. I don't think this is. I mean, special teams was good. Boswell hit his kicks. Russell, there was a turnover in the third quarter, but Russell, I didn't expect to be Superman. He's not that player anymore. And so clearly Philadelphia showed themselves to be better than Pittsburgh in many facets of the game. And I'm not saying they're the best team in the NFL. I think they're the most complete. I think they're the one with the fewest weaknesses. You could say Kansas City, but my thing really with Kansas City is they turn on that switch. They flip that switch. We'll get to Mahomes later in the show as it relates to his injury. I'm very impressed with what I saw from the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday because, in the day, Mike Tomlin as an underdog, I talked about this. This is one of my If I Were a Betman games on Friday, and I must say, I got crushed. Not only in If I Were a Betman, thank you, Green Bay, for saving me from going 0-3, but across the board on my picks, it was just not a good weekend for carving it up, to put it mildly. I did want to shift, though. Let me get a drink of water for a second. I did want to shift, though, to the game that everybody was getting hyped up about, and for good reason. Buffalo and Detroit, a lot of people dubbed it, myself included, potential Super Bowl preview. Could we see these two teams in February? New Orleans? Who knows? We very well still could. But Buffalo won what could not exactly be described as a defensive battle, 48-42 in Detroit against the Lions, handing Detroit their second loss of the season and their first since week 2 against Baker Mayfield and the all of a sudden red-hot Buccaneers. And Josh Allen was, awesome. You look at his numbers yesterday, 23 of 34, 362 yards passing. Keep in mind, he also had 68 yards rushing. So he had 430 yards of offense in this game. 2 touchdowns passing, 2 touchdowns rushing. He had a pass rating of 122. I don't know how it was higher. And a QBR 0 to 100 of 95. Not entirely sure how that was not higher. Josh Allen was nothing short of incredible. So let's talk in the micro as it pertains to this stretch of football, and then we'll talk the macro. Listen, we've seen this from athletes, the right kind of athletes, the ones that are intensely focused. Matter of fact, turn anything that's going in their life into positives, into be it motivation, what have you, into their playing careers. Is that Josh Allen's been great all season long, but he's been especially brilliant over the last 3 games. And just an idea, floating this out there. Not saying I'm right. If you want to call me wrong, I won't even fight you on it. But is it within the realm of possibility that maybe, just maybe, that this recent stretch Josh Allen has been going on as of late could have something to do with his recent love life engagement to Haley Steinfeld as of late? Because we could show you since that engagement, Josh Allen has been kind of amazing. 14 touchdowns, by the way, with 0 turnovers, with as many attempts as as many times he throws the football, he does a fumble. That's pretty good. 14 touchdowns, no turnovers, 1,000 total yards, and the team has scored 42 points per game over the last 3 games. So I'm just saying. I remember there was a stretch last year where Travis Kelce, we know Kelce had an amazing postseason, and this might have had something to do with what I'm about to say, but there was like a mini stretch. I think it was in like September, October. There was like a stat. I think I remember even showing the graphic of what Travis Kelce's numbers were when Taylor Swift, when they had just started their relationship, was in attendance, and when they weren't, and the numbers were significantly better. And Kelce's a great player. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. We know this. One of the greatest to ever play his position. Just saying, Josh, he and Haley have been together for a while, but I'm just suggesting. That's the micro. The macro, though. And Listen, I have been seen, I think, by those that have watched this show as a Josh Allen skeptic. I think haters too strong. Like they're I don't know how many, if there are any haters at all at this point, Josh Allen. If you are, I can't really help you. But my thing with Josh was always this. It was two things. Number one, guys, he's not Mahomes. I'm sorry. We've seen them 3 times in the playoffs. Every single game across the board, I've done segments on this. Mahomes has been the better player. He just has been. Even in the games Josh has played well, Mahomes has been either a little bit or a lot better. And number two with Josh is, for all of the mind-blowing upside, the downside, while not close to as frequent, is really bad. I mean, the picks, I always said about Josh, quarterbacks throw picks. I want quarterbacks to throw some picks just in the sense that I want you to be aggressive. But Josh was making mistakes, not even turn the ball over at times, where it's like, what is the risk reward of this play? He's cut that out. And you can attribute it to Joe Brady. You can attribute it to the offensive line, the best he's had in his career. You can attribute it in part to James Cook being, again, the source of the best running game he's had. James Cook had over 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns and 7.5 yards per carry, so he was great. But I'm willing to say at this point, whatever we attribute it to, maybe some of this is just a maturation process by Josh Allen. Getting older, this is year 7 for him in his career. Maybe it's just as simple as the maturation. I'm willing to go here with Josh Allen. I'm willing to go here. This guy's one of the 3 most talented players to ever play the position in the history of the game of football ever. There, I said it. That's who he is. If I had to rank it in order, I've said for a while, Mahomes, the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. Aaron Rodgers, people think I hate Aaron Rodgers. Lately, I dislike basically everything about how he's gone out about his business. But as a natural talent, are you kidding me? Aaron Rodgers is absolutely no lower than number 2. And Josh Allen's number 3. At that 3 spot, I was kind of somewhere in between Dan Marino and John Elway as just natural throwers of the football, how they carried themselves, the physicality of how they play the position. Folks, we've never seen a guy with the arm strength of a Brett Favre, a Mahomes, a Rodgers, just natural God-given arm strength. We've never seen that combined with the mobility that is greater than any quarterback ever, save for like Lamar Jackson and maybe Michael Vick. Michael Vick's probably above Josh Allen. Steve Young, he's got him. Cam Newton, he's got him. Rushing touchdowns, the whole thing. This guy is an all-time talent position. And it's there's very much I've heard the comparisons between, they say, oh, this is Mahomes and Allen is the new Brady Manning. It's like, well, Peyton Manning did win 5 MVPs. And the whole knock on Peyton for years is, oh, he couldn't beat Brady. But Peyton was setting records. Peyton was winning league MVPs. His thing is he just couldn't get it done in the playoffs. Josh, it's like the reverse, right? Like Josh's playoff numbers are really good. I remember he had a stretch in 2021 where he had a darn near perfect pass rate. Josh has been great in the playoffs. He's just fallen short to a dynasty. I feel like there's to do a cross-sport example, a bit of a LeBron James and Kevin Durant type of scenario, where it's like KD would have nights where it's like, is he better than LeBron? Just the ability to get to spot, knock the shots down, the handle, the three-pointer, the getting to the all of it. KD is one of the most complete offensive players ever. But then you look at LeBron, it's like, man, Durant's awesome, but LeBron's just on a different level. That's how I feel about Mahomes. Well, the numbers, compare their playoff numbers. Josh's are excellent. Mahomes' are otherworldly. They're Madden-like. They're insane. I've shown them multiple times on the show. His pass ratings off the charts, record pass yards per game, all better than his regular season numbers. And he's a 2-time regular season MVP for what that's worth. And so, but that doesn't, you don't have to, you don't have to burn Josh Allen's light in order to give credit to Patrick Mahomes. You don't have to do that. These are 2 great players in their own right. And I mean, again, Dan Marino was awesome. John Elway is one of the 5 best to ever do it, in my opinion. They could not do with their legs what this man can do with his legs. And we know his arm strength is incredible. Like, if you're talking about a guy who's in mid-60s completion, I'm not expecting Josh Allen to be as accurate as Joe Burrow. I'm not asking him to be 69, 70% completion guy. That would make him Superman, essentially. Okay, like, don't turn the ball over. Great runner, great arm. Oh, and he completes like 7 out of 10 passes. That's just not realistic for a guy that plays the way that Josh Allen plays. But for him to have been able to cut out the mistakes that he's been able to cut out while doing what he does with his arm and his legs is, look, I've been saying the last few weeks, I feel like Saquon was the MVP. It's becoming darn near impossible not to say Josh Allen is not the MVP of the National Football League. I mean, the case for Lamar last year, and Lamar, by the way, did not have the numbers Josh had, but the case for Lamar was, well, numbers are really good. They're not amazing, but they're really good. As a matter of fact, Dak and Brock Purdy's numbers were actually better, but the record is great. They're crushing great teams. You kind of have to give it to Lamar. Like that blowout on Christmas Day against the 49ers, I feel like sealed it for him. But this year, the Ravens are 8-5. They're not going to win as many games as last year. I get the head-to-head between Allen and Lamar. That happened back in week 4. These are different teams, different players, different seasons. It doesn't say Lamar isn't great. It's not to say Jared Goff, who I'll get to the Lions in just a second, wasn't great yesterday. But you see the juxtaposition of Jared Goff, who's a pretty good, really good quarterback. Like top 10, you can make a more than valid case. Jared Goff's one of the 10 best quarterbacks on the planet. But to see that and, oh yeah, that guy's going to have a bust in Canton, and you don't even think twice about it with Josh Allen. Listen, people could say I've come around on Josh Allen. I've just been like, hey, I love everything I see. Just cut out the mindless errors, and he's kind of done that. Matter of fact, he's really done that. So, I mean, look at Josh Allen's numbers this year. He's thrown 5 picks all season. 14 games, thrown 5 interceptions. So you give him a lot of credit where it's due, and he's been nothing short of spectacular. And right now, I think he's got to be the MVP. And from what I've seen, this is one of the 3 greatest. Sorry, not greatest. Let me back up for a second. One of the 3 most talented guys to play the position. Tom's the GOAT. Tom Brady's the GOAT. Nobody's going to dispute that. Tom cannot move like Josh. Tom didn't have the arm strength of Josh. Now, Tom and the clutch gene, the intangibles, the accuracy, movement in the pocket, like those are the things. And obviously, more rings than any franchise. 7 is what makes him the GOAT. But man, this guy's out. This guy's unbelievable. As for Detroit, though, and then we'll go to break. Glad you're with us on late night, carving it up live, nearing 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Appreciate you stopping by. Quickly on the Detroit Lions, the losing team in this game. I picked this team confidently back in September to represent the NFC in Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. I said Lions and Chiefs. That was my pick. And I still feel good about the Chiefs. Get to them later in the show. I am still a Dan Campbell and Detroit Lions believer. I mean, for what it's worth, they did just score 42 points. Like, that's something. I get they lost the game, but how you lose the game, how you win the game, those things got to come to account. There's no question, especially of the course of a 17-game season when we see what you were prior to this. But I have never, ever been less confident in my Detroit Lions pick than I am right now in this very moment. And it has everything to do with health. Everything. I know I went on about Philadelphia in the first segment, but if Detroit was fully healthy, Philly's fully healthy, I pick Detroit. I'm sorry. Obviously, Philly would have an advantage playing at home in the cold outdoors as opposed to playing in the dome in Detroit, which is a gigantic advantage for the Lions and Jared Goff in particular. But I'd still pick the Detroit Lions just because I have the many different ways they could beat you. The problem is they're starting to get stripped of those ways to beat you because they're starting to get stripped of players due to the injury bug. I mean, Dan Campbell, we'll get to the defense. Dan Campbell just announced today, David Montgomery's out for the season probably with an MCL injury. I think he's going to have surgery on it. We'll see. Maybe Montgomery comes back. I don't know, NFC Championship game if Detroit is able to end up getting there. Maybe. Like, this is a big, big loss for the Lions. I've talked off and on about, thunder and lightning. Gibbs is thunder and Montgomery's thunder and Gibbs is lightning. And Thunder's been stripped from the lineup. We could show you. If you don't think David Montgomery's a big loss, you're sadly mistaken. This is what he's done this season. Okay, he's averaged about 4 yards a carry. He's got 12 rushing touchdowns. Only James Cook and Derrick Henry have more rush touchdowns than he does. He has over 300 yards receiving. I mean, this is an integral part of an offense in the National Football League that is being stripped even more so. Defensively, they're falling apart right now. So let me just read the injuries in terms of the guys that are out right now for Detroit, okay? Obviously, chief among them, Aiden Hutchinson, one of the premier pass rushers in football when healthy. Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Aleem McNeil, who got hurt yesterday, Alex Anzalone, Malcolm Rodriguez, Derek Barnes, Carlton Davis, Khalil Dorsey. That's 8 guys. Carlton Davis is a Super Bowl champion with Tampa. He's been a solid corner throughout his career. We know who Aiden Hutchinson is. Marcus Davenport's been a good player. Anzalone is a tremendous linebacker. Derek Barnes has shown flashes of brilliance when he's been on the field. Last season, I think he might have the game-winning interception against Tampa Bay against Baker. Last year, this guy's a really good player. We can say, Dan Campbell can say next man up, all these different things, but eventually you run out of men to bring up. When you're working with second stringers in a defense that's giving up against playoff teams 26 points per game, that's a problem. And I've went on and on about Aaron Glenn. Listen, this is not an Aaron Glenn problem. This is an injuries problem. This is we're getting hurt at the worst possible time problem. Now, if you look at Detroit right now, listen, the sky's not exactly falling. They're 12-2. Okay, they're still, despite the loss, the number 1 seed in the NFC. And if this result holds, it looks like it will with Minnesota blowing out the Chicago Bears. No surprise there. It's because of a tiebreaker, because Detroit did beat Minnesota earlier this season, that the Lions will still maintain not only the top spot in the NFC North, but the top seed in the NFC. You look at their schedule moving forward for Detroit, okay? They go to Chicago, who's about to lose their 8th straight game, okay? Then they go to San Francisco. I think we saw those limitations on Thursday again, okay? Then they finish at home, fortunately for them at home, but against Minnesota in a game that could not only decide the division, but the number 1 seed in the NFC. You could either go from being the 1 seed, a week off, in home field advantage throughout the playoffs in the NFC side of the bracket, or you could go on the road from start to finish and be the 5 seed. So, that game obviously will hold massive ramifications, or very well could. So, listen, I'm not exactly selling stock on the Detroit Lions. We could talk about people going on about Dan Campbell, the onside kick early in the 4th quarter. I didn't like the call at all, but in a sense, you can make a case for it, just because if you're Dan Campbell and I'm saying, hey, coach, you made the wrong call, Dan Campbell could say, we can't get a stop. Josh Allen's killing us out here. What do you want me to do? So giving his team an extra possession, I get it, but I would not have done that. Just like I wouldn't have gone on 4th down last week against Green Bay. I said the day after, don't think I would have done it. Probably not the smartest call. It just worked. Okay, you could do dumb things in life. They may still work. Okay, that didn't mean they were the right decision, or a smart decision anyway. So Detroit's gonna be fine, but I'm getting a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I'm getting a little iffy. My saving grace is, okay, Sam Darnold's been amazing this season, but we know Sam Darnold can occasionally, we saw against Jacksonville, revert back into the old Sam Darnold, and Nick Sirianni on 4th down is the least trustworthy coach in football. So this guy's not exactly falling for the Lions. The Vikings are going to win tonight. They're bowling out Chicago right now. Detroit's going to be just fine for the moment, and I still think they'll get the number 1 seed in the NFC. But, man, they've got to start getting some guys back healthy. And Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have to take on a bigger role. But the good news is for Detroit, Jared Goff just threw for 5 touchdowns, and the Lions scored 42 points. So, not the end of the world for Detroit. I think they'll be fine. We are just getting started on a late-night edition of Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody stopping by on a Monday, on a football Monday, a football Monday night with multiple games going on at the same time. We'll give you updates on those, as well as reaction to the Green Bay Packers blowing out the Seattle Seahawks, and the Mahomes injury, how I think the Kansas City Chiefs should handle that later on the show. But be back in a minute. This is Carving Up Live right now, and we'll see you in just a minute. Welcome back to Carvey Up Live. So it's let me just say this quickly before we get into quick updates on how the 2 Monday night games are going, and then obviously reaction to Green Bay's blowout of the Seattle Seahawks yesterday. I did want to say this quickly because it was brought to my attention via the Grid Network group chat, which I sometimes mention. I'm not going to go into the particulars of what we talk about. That's in house, okay? That's Grid Network stuff. But I did get a my man Barry Grant Jr. Shout out to Barry. I know he's watching. Big New York Mets fan. They obviously signed Juan Soto last week. And he screenshotted a post from SNY TV, which is the network that broadcasts the Mets games. And it's of Juan Soto in a Mets jersey. And there's a comment from a particular Hall of Fame player. And as a matter of fact, the transcript of the comment I have on video.
Yankees lose.
To a T. I mean, listen, the Red Sox may have lost out in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, but again, I wanted to, obviously, it's Juan Soto, duh, wanted him to come to the Red Sox, but I knew, I honest to God, I said it in the show, I always felt like the Mets were going to get him, and so for Big Poppy to come on there and do that, that's beautiful. It's beautiful, okay? You never want to see the Yankees be successful at anything, not as a Red Sox fan. Real quick update around the NFL. The Bears just scored a touchdown, probably too little too late, but they're down now 27-12 against the Minnesota Vikings in this game. Sam Darnold hasn't been that great. Completion percentage isn't good, 23 of 39, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, but he's got a pass rate of 73. Caleb Williams has a higher pass rate. He did just throw a touchdown pass. The Bears failed on a 2-point conversion. So, yeah, looks like Chicago's probably going to lose that one. I will say, let me just go and put up the graphic. I did have the Vikings winning this game 31-21. That score has no chance of happening just based on the math of it. But I did have Minnesota -7 and winning the game 31-21. So Bears about to lose their 8th straight game, and Minnesota's about to go to 12-2 and winning their 7th straight game, and is about to tie Detroit for the division lead. And so you have that, and then Atlanta and Vegas. I haven't seen much of this game. I don't imagine it's been aesthetically pleasing. Atlanta's up 15-3 against the Vegas Raiders. Again, Desmond Ridder starting at quarterback. So God bless him. There's only so much you can do with that if you're Las Vegas. Brock Bowers, in my opinion, is the rookie of the year. I've said that for the last couple of weeks. I think Brock Bowers is out of this world great. I think he's a generational talent at the tight end position. But somebody's got to give him the football. I mean, he's got 3 catches for 35 yards. Somebody's going to get Brock Bowers the football. So there's our updates for the other games. I did want to transition into the Sunday night game. Green Bay blowing out Seattle. And in doing so, I have to walk back a statement I made 10 days ago. So when Green Bay lost to Detroit, my takeaway was, I know Jordan Love's excellent. I know Matt LaFleur has done as good of a coaching job this year as any year. And I thought he was great last year, kind of developing Love. The defense is up, has gotten better, all these different things. Josh Jacobs has been amazing. Probably the second best free agent acquisition, or third best, all of them basically being running backs, although I'd slate Russell Wilson in there slightly, has been a great acquisition. But my thing was this. They're excellent, but 2 things. They're 1-4 against potential playoff teams in the NFC, and they're still just a little too young. Like, didn't we see last year, they blew out Dallas, shocked everybody, they smoked the Cowboys in Jerry World, and then they go to San Francisco, and folks, they should have won that game. They outplayed the Niners, but dropped interceptions, missed field goals, Jordan Love making mistakes in the second half. It was like, okay, not quite ready for this moment just yet, but they're getting there. That's kind of how I felt about not only this year's team coming into the season, when I thought they'd be somewhere around like 11-6, the 6th seed. It looks like they're going to be the 6th seed unless Minnesota or Detroit falls apart and Green Bay gets hot. But I'll walk back that statement I made 10 days ago, a couple Fridays ago, in that I didn't feel like Green Bay. I thought they were excellent, but couldn't win the Super Bowl. That team can win the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, the way Jordan Love's been playing, okay? Last 4 games, I think he's got 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jordan Love had a little bit of an interception problem after he came back from injury, but he's cut that out. He's played more clean with the football, and Josh Jacobs is running the football like a madman as of late. Last night, if we could pull up his numbers, he had 94 yards, 26 carries, but just that grinding pace of this Green Bay offense. Romeo Doubs made a ridiculous catch in the back of the end zone to really kind of ice the game for the Packers. Seattle had been hot as of late. They're at home. It's prime time, Sunday night. That's going to get any player juiced up to go out there. And Green Bay came into Seattle and mopped the floor with the Seahawks for 60 minutes. And so if you talk about a team, listen, would it help tremendously for Green Bay to have, a home game or two or more than that at Lambeau? Oh, yeah. Yeah, cold weather team, maybe the coldest, or along with Buffalo, the second coldest stadium in the league. Yeah, that's a home field advantage. But there's ways that you can be able to bring your show on the road, and Green Bay can do that. Whether it's indoors, whether it's, Seattle is not exactly known for being, being the greatest weather conditions to play football, especially in December, and to go in there and just mop Seattle. Now, I know Geno Smith got hurt, but the game was already trending that way. Geno throwing a bad interception. Jordan Love's playing clean with the football, 2 touchdowns. By the way, he had a passer rating of 123 and a QBR of 90. Green Bay's schedule moving forward, we look at it. Got a home game against the Saints. They should blow out New Orleans badly. At Minnesota, that's tough. You finish with the Chicago Bears. This is worst case a 12-5 team, I feel like. I really do. Listen, if they end up finishing 13-4 and yet somehow, some way, like third place in the division, has there ever been a 13-win third place team in the history of the National Football League? There's no way. I'm not sure there's been a second place 13-win team ever. Maybe that's the case. Someone could point that out to me. There's no way there's been a third place 13-win team. Green Bay could get that if they went out. I still feel like 12-5. They'll take care of New Orleans and Chicago, lose to the Vikings, and finish 12-5. But we saw it last year with Jordan Love. And this is a year ago when I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. The flashes I've seen from Jordan Love aren't great, or the good flashes are infrequent. And then second half of the year, we went over the numbers on the show. You can make a case he's the best quarterback in football to finish the regular season, and then he continued that against the Cowboys in the wild card round. Well, he's starting not quite to at the rate of last year. The pass rating is comparable, but similar to last year, like you're starting to see this sort of, okay, Jordan Love's getting going second half of the seasons. We've seen this a lot, by the way, with young quarterbacks. I mean, we saw it. Listen, his team's having a horrendous year. He's hurt right now, but his team's having a horrendous year. Trevor Lawrence is kind of known for second half resurgences. We saw it in 2022 when he carried them to the playoffs when they got off to a rough start. They would have been one of the top seeds last year had he not gotten hurt 3 times. That's kind of what I'm seeing right now with Love. And listen, Green Bay's a scary team. Like I don't want to. I mean, if I'm one of the division winners, the Rams, whoever wins the NFC South looks like it's probably going to be Tampa. We'll see if Atlanta wins tonight and keeps pace with them. But I'm not looking forward to playing a team that runs the football with Josh Jacobs, has an elite offensive line. By the way, with continuity, Green Bay's offensive line has been probably one of the best O-lines of the league, not just in terms of productivity, but in terms of continuity. Guys are staying healthy. Guys are playing together, and that helps a quarterback. That helps a run game. That helps a coach a ton, more than you realize. So, again, not a team I want to run into the playoffs. Am I picking them to go to the Super Bowl? No, I'm not going to do that. But if they run to Tampa, although I don't know, man, the way the Buccaneers are playing right now, the way Baker's got it rolling, I don't know. Week 15 recap in about 15 minutes. But, yeah, that's Jordan Love, second half of seasons, the running game with Josh Jacobs. By the way, the defense has moments where it performs to the level of like a top 12-ish defense. That can win you playoff game, maybe 2. And when you have a coach like Matt LaFleur who can go toe-to-toe with the best of them, you always got a shot. And that's the thing. Like, if that, to me, is probably what constitutes as a Super Bowl contender, because it's not like basketball where you have to win 4 times out of 7. It's not like same thing with baseball, like where it's 3 games in 5 in the division series, best out of 7 in the last 2, or hockey as well. It's, can you beat a team 1 time? And any team can beat anybody. It's the NFL at any given Sunday, as the Al Pacino movie goes. But do I think that any given Sunday in the playoffs, your coach can go toe-to-toe with the other coach, your quarterback can go toe-to-toe with the other quarterback, your defense, maybe on Green Bay, depends on their, if they bring their A game, and the running game can be as good, if not better. Sound like a Super Bowl contender. By the way, I've said all year, probably the most loaded wide receiving core in the league. Watson, Dobbs, who is great. What's my man? Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. You've got Tucker Kraft. You've got so many guys They can just give you multiple different layers, your speed guys, your possession guys. And Jordan Love, when he's accurate with the football, and he was last night, 20 of 27, it's a dangerous team that you don't want to run into in the playoffs. So shout out to Green Bay. And I'll say this, because I know my sister's watching, and those that have watched the show know she's a Packers fan. This is not an endorsement saying Green Bay's going to New Orleans, so slow your roll. They may not even get out of the first round depending on who they play. But they may go to the NFC title game. I mean, it's. I'll tell you what, man. I have stayed on this take all season long. And over the course, over the breadth, over the width of 15 games thus far, we're going into week 16 on Thursday, Broncos Chargers. I've been proven correct on this in that, NFC's got more contenders than the AFC. If you look at the AFC, to me, the true teams I can see with my eyes winning the Super Bowl. I've heard the confetti test. I've heard it said the confetti test. Close your eyes. Can you see it? This team winning the Super Bowl, confetti coming down in the stadium, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Can you see it this year? And be objective. Can you see it? AFC, Kansas City, Buffalo. I still think Pittsburgh can. That's it. I'm sorry, Houston. Really, I have not been impressed by the Texans for 2.5 months now. Denver, too young. Chargers, too limited on offense. Baltimore, I'm sorry, they're too. I don't know what Ravens team I'm getting on a week-to-week basis. Heck, I don't know if the best player on their team, who at least he was for a long time, Justin Tucker, I don't know if he's going to show up to the party. NFC teams I can see winning the Super Bowl: Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, Los Angeles Rams. I've seen them do it before. By the way, they've got a better receiving core this year than they had in 2021. Okay, I can at this point, the way they're playing, see the Vikings winning the Super Bowl. Nick Foles won one. Okay, is it crazy to think Sam Darnold can? And I can see Green Bay winning the Super Bowl. I'm close on Tampa. Baker's just too darn reckless at times for me to totally trust him, and so that's the only thing that kind of holds me back on the Buccaneers. But yeah, I mean, what do you got in the NFC? Is that 5 teams? Detroit, Philadelphia, Rams. No, that's 6. Detroit, Philly, Rams, Minnesota, Green Bay. That's 5 teams. I apologize. That I think can win the Super Bowl this season. Yeah, okay, Chloe. Again, I mentioned Green Bay. Okay, relax. I mentioned your Packers. All right, just slow your roll. Let's put it this way. They're not exactly going to be on the top of Bryce's best 10 next week. They're great. Okay. That was really impressive what they did in Seattle last night. But I don't want to say by no fault of their own. They did lose to these teams, but they are third place in their division. And that game in 2 weeks against Minnesota is going to show me a lot. That game's going to be in Minnesota, by the way. If I had to guess what that line's going to be, I'd say we got to see how next week plays out, but Vikings minus 3.5, 4. That's about what the line I feel like is probably going to be. If Green Bay can go in and win, okay, then maybe we may have to up them a little bit. That's all right. They're in Chloe's best 10. Everybody knows that's more accurate. Okay, you know what? While I'm looking over the recap or some of these games, I need to see. You don't have to do 10. You want to do 5. Okay, just give me your best teams while we're up in here. But they're in Bryson's best 10. They're just not the top of it. Where did I have Green? I actually had the list. Where did I have Green Bay last week? Where were they at? They were 7. Okay. I'll probably move them up a spot. They're certainly no lower than 7. You see Seattle right there. Seattle's definitely going to drop out next week. There's no question. Buffalo's at the top last week. They're going to fall off a bit. So, I'm going to be generous. Chloe says it's too low. Listen, put that list up again. Okay, they're not better than Detroit. They lost twice to Detroit. Stop. Okay, Kansas City's the back-to-back champs, and they lost once. They had the best record in football. Okay, gonna go with them. Buffalo's got probably the MVP in Josh Allen. Pittsburgh has a better defense, as good of a coach. Okay, the weapons Green Bay's got. There's no question. That'd be a close game. Minnesota kind of blew Green Bay out. It ended up being close, but Green Bay made a rally in the fourth quarter. And Philadelphia's going to move up a lot. I'll just tell you all on the front end, Philly's going to move up a lot next week. Green Bay is not better than the Eagles. If you want to say Green Bay is better than Pittsburgh, which I'm sure you do, Chloe, I'm sure you do, with no objectivity whatsoever. Listen, for those of you who don't know, this is a cheesehead wearing Jordan Love jersey, okay? She loves her pack. There's no doubt. Shout out to my sis. What games go? Okay, so Vikings are blowing out Chicago, 30-12. So that game's a wrap. That game's been a wrap. Atlanta is beating Vegas 15-9. At the 2-minute warning, they have a 3rd down and 6 at the Vegas 45. Raiders have no timeout, so Vegas could still win that game. It's pretty slim, but knowing how susceptible the Falcons defense is, they're capable of giving up a big play. I don't know about Terry McLaurin style against the Cowboys, but they're capable of giving up a big play. So Vikings are going to win and cover easily against the Bears. No surprise there. And Atlanta is up by 6 with 2 to go in the 4th quarter with the ball. So we'll see what happens there. Back-to-back champion Kansas City Chiefs. Want to talk about them for a second because normally, especially at the game played out yesterday, not really much to talk about. Listen, I actually did think Kansas City scored 21 like I thought they would. I thought the Browns would actually put up a fight. Biggest game of their schedule. Season's over. You want to put on good tape. It's the champs back-to-back. You're at home. Cold weather, which Kansas City's used to that, but I thought Jameis might have one of those games, and I took Cleveland +4 because I'm like, Kansas City just wins close games every week, and I think it's part of their identity and what they're about. But Chiefs came in, did what they were supposed to do, mopped Cleveland. But bad news. In the short term, we'll see long term with Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes, not eye-popping numbers, only completed 50% of his throws, 159. He did have 2 touchdowns, though, and no turnovers. The story right now, though, on the the Chiefs, and I see the only reason I'm showing the comment from Big Tumma is in the comments, will Carson Wentz be starting next week for Kansas City, in your opinion? That kind of transitions me to this. So Mahomes injures his ankle. We're definitely not going to show the play right now because it was pretty gruesome. If this injury is, let's play hypotheticals for a second because I think this is important. Because listen, I can only speculate on the injury. I can certainly only speculate on how Mahomes feels physically, what the doctors are telling him, what Andy Reid knows. We don't know. The Chiefs are going to play this Saturday against Houston. If this injury happened in week 2, is Mahomes out for week 3? Like that to me, and again, we don't know the severity. We can't say definitively yes or no. We do know the X-rays came back negative, which is great. God knows we don't want Mahomes out for the year. That'd be the worst thing ever. Regardless if you like the Chiefs or not, nobody wants to see that. Here's my thing. Kansas City's 13-1. They've got the best record in football now that Detroit lost, and they've got a 2-game cushion over Buffalo with 3 to go. But the Bills have the tiebreaker because they obviously beat them about a month ago. Here's how I approach it if I'm Kansas City, or at least approach it with this in mind. Alfred put together a great graphic. We'll go ahead and show it to you. If Carson Wentz could be at least this. This is what Kansas City is without Mahomes since 2018. Not amazing, but pretty productive. About 228 pass yards, 5-1 touchdown interception ratio. That's very good. 65% completion. That'll work. 94 rating and 2-2. And by the way, you see who the quarterbacks were. Exactly. Remember the names: Matt Moore, Chad Henne, and Blaine Gabbert. Okay, all of those guys are. I mean, Chiefs fans may remember anything is possible, but let's not get carried away here. Is that Carson Wentz? And funny enough, the very first take, I say this every time Carson Wentz's name comes up, the very first take I ever gave on this show, 2019, October 21st, remember it like it was yesterday, was that Dak Prescott is better than Carson Wentz. That was a fiery debate at the time. I always said Dak is clearly better than Wentz, ended up being proven right in the end on that. But Carson Wentz does have talent. He's a backup, but he's a pretty good backup. He fits the Andy Reid system well. He's a homeless man's version of Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's got the arm strength, mobility, but he's prone to really bad mistakes. There's been questions in the past, I think valid ones, about his leadership. But with Andy Reid there, Travis Kelce, the support system, Hollywood Brown could be back this week. You have DeAndre Hopkins doing his thing. Noah Gray's a good backup tight end. The O-line in Kansas City, center guard, is the best in football. So, by the way, you got that defense backing up. Like, it's not like Carson Wentz is inheriting a mess here. If Carson Wentz, listen, here be my mindset. I don't know if Mahomes is going to feel great in 4 days rather, when they play the actually it's gonna be 5 days when they play Houston. Is that game in Kansas City? It is. That game is at Kansas City, so that does help the Chiefs. Right now, Houston's a 2.5-point favorite at Kansas City. That tells you Vegas doesn't think Mahomes is going to play. The next game, 4 days later, Pittsburgh. Now, you tell me if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, because I'm a Steelers fan. I want my Steelers to beat the Chiefs. Christmas Day, whole country watching. I want a Christmas Day win for Pittsburgh. If you're a Kansas City fan, you're telling me if, let's say Mahomes doesn't play on Saturday, because that's the start of this premise. And I get Buffalo is running you down. You want to get the number 1 seed, the first round bye, all of that, absolutely, and you should pursue it. But if it's within the capability for you to do so, you're telling me you want let's say 80% Patrick Mahomes, 85% Patrick Mahomes out there in Pittsburgh against TJ Watt? Yeah, I don't think that's ideal, especially with some of the problems that Kansas City has had on the edge. Left tackle, right tackle, their offensive line. I know they've upgraded, left tackle, but there's been some problems at right. Like, TJ Watt can get in there and really, really wreck a football game. That goes without saying. He's the best defensive player in football. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think if you're a Chiefs fan, you want the face of your franchise, the face of the league, running for his life against TJ Watt, who's just looking to mess you-know-what up. So, listen, if Mahomes is healthy enough to go on Saturday, okay, you're obviously going to play him against Pittsburgh. You want to put yourself in position. You could wrap up the 1 seed by Christmas. You'd essentially have like 3 weeks off because you'd have the next game against, do they play Denver, I think, at the end of the season? Does Kansas City? You have to go to Denver and in the regular season finale. Then you got the next week off. Then you got your playoff game. So it's essentially, do the math, it's about 3 weeks away from the game. And that's excuse me, that's been a debate for years in the NFL. Rest versus Russ. I would... If that, and Mahomes had a pretty pronounced limp when he came out of the game. It didn't look good. I know he had a pretty bad limp against Tampa Bay, that Monday night game earlier this year. I don't know. I would, if he's not right, you do at least have the 2-game cushion. I get it. Buffalo can still run you down. I understand. Man, let's weigh the hypotheticals. Okay, what's a worst case scenario? That the Chiefs get the 1 seed, but Mahomes is just, it takes it maybe re-aggravates the angle and then is like 70% healthy. And by the way, you have to go on the road for 1 playoff game as the 2 seed. If you assume he gets the AFC title game, which it's Mahomes, he's going to, if healthy. Or the other scenario, I just think it's just not worth the risk for the Kansas City. It's not worth the risk for Kansas City. Vegas is driving right now with a chance to win the game. Let me go and pull up the comment real quick as this is materializing. Big Thomas says, yeah, I don't think I'd want my injured quarterback against any of those last 3 defenses, to be honest. Yeah, listen, we know what Denver can do, taking the ball away like that. Pittsburgh, self-explanatory. Houston's got an excellent defense as well. So, listen, if the injury's bad enough, you have to sit him. But, yeah, it's... Which problem would you rather have? Because it's not listen, the injury happened. Now this is the reality for Kansas City. We'll play Carson Wentz at least the next 2 games, see what happens for week 18, and risk being the 2 seed, because Pittsburgh's not going to run Kansas City down. Even if they beat him, they're probably not going to run the Chiefs down. And certainly the Texans can't. But you're the 2 seed. You got 2 home playoff games. Mahomes is healthier, or you play him. Maybe you still do get the 1 seed, but Mahomes is physically compromised. I think you got to weigh the risk reward of this, and the risk is simply not worth whatever reward there might be. Real quick, because there's 10 seconds left, then we'll get to Week 15 recap. Vegas, there's 10 seconds left in the game. Vegas is down 6. They got a 2nd and 10. Where are they at? ESPN, show us where the Raiders are at in the field, because they were down 15-3 with about 3 minutes to go. On ESPN showing a stat that says teams trailing by 12 points in the final 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter are 0-98 this season. So the Vegas could do something really improbable. They're at the 35-yard line. Give you a quick play-by-play for a second. Okay, Ritter's rolling to his left. He's going to heave it into the end zone and incomplete. So there's 2 seconds left the clock. Listen, this is what happens when we do a late night show for Carving Up Live. We're going to do play-by-play, 2 seconds left. We're going to have a Hail Mary in Vegas between the Falcons and the Raiders in the game that's not been terribly entertaining. Before this last play, I'll go and show you. This was my pick for the game prior to. I had Atlanta covering, which if this holds, they will. I had 23-17, them winning by 6. They're winning the game by 6, so see if that happens. But let's see what happens this last play. Atlanta could call timeout here just to see what Vegas wants to do. If I'm the Raiders, this is Brock Bowers or bust. Okay, here we go. So Ritter's going to drop back. This is the last play of the game. He's going to heave it, end zone. It's in the air, and looks like it was intercepted. It was. Okay, it was a little bit of a tie. It looks like the Hail Mary in Seattle. Remember that Green Bay-Seattle game is a tie-up in the end zone? Okay, so Atlanta gets the interception. They win the game. It gets, ironically, their old quarterback last year, Desmond Ridder. So Vegas falls to 2-12, tied for the worst record in the league with the Giants. And the Falcons are 7-7 and only game back out of the division with the tiebreaker over Tampa. So for as well as Tampa's playing, like they're not out of the woods yet, although Tampa is playing well. So let's go ahead to, since I've already showed you my predictions, the games have already finished. Let's go and get into Week 15 recap before we get out of here. Appreciate everybody tuning in on this late night edition of Carving It Up Live. Should be back here on Wednesday, although it's more likely it'll be a pre-recorded show as opposed to a live show. So we'll give you updates as we go along. But we will be back, no question about it, on Wednesday. Week 15 recap. Ravens blew out the Giants 35-14. Probably the least shocking result of the day. The Ravens on the road were a 16-point favorite, which... yeah, duh. Of course. Listen, Lamar Jackson, 93 QBR, 154 pass rating. Again, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 5 touchdown passes on the day. Ravens ran for $170. They did what they were supposed to do against a Giants team that very well might be the worst team in the league. Tommy DeVito got benched for Aaron Rodgers' buddy, Tim Boyle, who, as I hate to be rough on Mr. Boyle, but was a bad college quarterback. Much less an NFL quarterback. The Giants are really hoping that they get Shedeur Sanders. Let's put it that way. Okay. By the way, Shedeur Sanders. By the way, congratulations, Travis Hunter. I would have voted him Heisman. Respect to Ashton Genty. You're amazing. I thought Travis was a little bit more impressive in what he did than what Ashton Genty did. But there's a video when the Colorado players were in New York City of Shedeur Sanders throwing passes to what's my man's name at a LSU receiver, Malik Neighbors. Throwing passes to Malik Neighbors in New York. So we could see that. Speaking of New York, the Jets won a game. The New York Jets won a football game, 32-25, back-to-back weeks. Aaron Rodgers, pretty good. I won't play let's call it the Keegan Michael Key substitute teacher skit with the Aaron quote. I won't play that because Aaron was really good and the Jets won. But Aaron, 289 yards. Completion percentage not great, but 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. He had a QBR of 80 and a passer of 120. Devontae Adams turned back the clock. He had 9 catches for $198. We saw like circa 2020, 2021 Devontae. So listen, if you're like I'm sure my sister's still in here, like an old school, well, I mean, not go there, not old school, but Green Bay Packers fan who remembers the good old days of 12 and 17, Rodgers to Adams. Albeit against a horrendous Jacksonville team. You got to see it. Mac Jones, weird game. Threw for a lot of yards, 294, 2 touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions. He is, after all, Mac Jones. So there's certain limitations that come with being the worst quarterback in the league. Although we'll get to Will Levis. He's giving Mac a run for his money. There's no question about that. Speaking of that game, Bengals taking out the Titans 37-27. Joe Burrow threw 2 picks, but 3 touchdowns. Really the story in this game, because Cincinnati's not going to make the playoffs. Their chances of getting there are almost impossible. They're basically impossible. The Bengals not going to be a playoff team. But when you look at what Cincinnati's done, okay, I look at something that I saw at the end of that game with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor. Did you notice that? Joe Burrow is what's going on? There's some noise going on in the kitchen over here. Did you notice that clip of Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor, head coach of the Bengals, toward the end of that game? Like Joe Burrow who's Mr. Cool, calm, collected. Joe Burrow's not showing any emotion. He's relaxed. He's chill. But Zach Taylor's with Joe Burrow on the sidelines late in that game. It's fourth quarter, and Joe Burrow looks I mean, beside himself. He's like, what like he's like cussing Zach Taylor out. There's some back and forth going on there. It was a weird exchange in what has been to say the very least, a disappointing Cincinnati Bengals season. The defense has been bad. Mason Rudolph comes in for Joe Burrow, and even still, the Bengals, the Titans, weren't able. The Bengals give them a lot of points, but Will Levis in this game was, everything that I've been proven right on him from the jump, and the Titans should have selected Hendon Hooker in the second round a year ago. Can't undo that mistake. But Will Levis, 8 for 12 for 89 yards, 0 touchdowns, and not 1, not 2, 3 interceptions for Mr. Levis. He had a QBR 0 to 100. I'm not kidding when I say this. 0 to 100 of 1.1 did Will Levis. It was probably the worst quarterback performance of the season. He had a passer rating. I'm not sure how it was this high. 49, maybe just because the completion percentage was good, but Will Levis stinks. He's terrible. Joe Burrow's excellent. Uneven game for him. Cincinnati won. It doesn't really matter. At this point, it's just kind of killing their draft positioning, but see how they can finish this year. Because Jamar Chase, 15 touchdowns on the year. If there's one thing Cincinnati does well, it's number 9, Joe Burrow, and number 1, Jamar Chase. That's pretty much where it ends. What else we got? Cowboys. This was one of my if I were a Batman games. I took Carolina minus 2.5. My bad on that one. Dallas did their thing. Cooper Rush, one of the better backups in the NFL. 3 touchdown passes. Again, a little over 200 yards. Like, listen, Cooper is not going to fill the stat sheet, but he's relatively efficient. He doesn't turn the ball over a ton. Obviously, you're going to get a big dropout without Dak, but really the story for Dallas is, like, quietly kind of running the football pretty well. Like, wasn't that the thing with Dallas? Is like, I bagged on him. We've all bagged on him. It's like, man, they cannot run the football to save their lives. Okay, let's look at the last few games for Dallas, okay? Thanksgiving Day against the Giants, and albeit it was the Giants, 122 yards to the ground. That's pretty good, okay? Against the Cincinnati Bengals at home, 156 yards rushing. Rico Dowdle had a $131 of those, okay? And then against the Carolina Panthers, the Cowboys rushed for 211 rushing yards, averaged 5 yards per carry. So I'll tell you, if you're Dallas, first of all, I know a lot of Cowboys fans, again, they're not exactly thrilled that they're winning these games because it's just killing their draft stock. They're probably not going to get Ashton Genty, who many argued should have been the Heisman on Saturday. I was a Travis Hunter guy, but I think Genty is phenomenal. I can make a case that with this recent resurgence of Rico Dowdle, and some Cowboys fans saying, hey, maybe we should just stick with Dowdle and not draft a running back, I would make a case that with the way this Cowboys O-line is playing significantly better than it had been prior to Thanksgiving Day, might actually be more of a case for Genty that, hey, O-line's playing better, put Genty in. Maybe he could be an MVP candidate. Maybe he could be a Saquon Barkley type guy. I don't know, but good win for Dallas. Not a good win for the draft positioning, but, good win. And Carolina had one big play, and that was pretty much all they had in the tank for that game. Crazy game, Washington and New Orleans. So Commanders do what I think most people thought they do, and that's they jumped out to a 17-0 lead. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to cover. No reason to watch this game. Turn back to the game. I'm like, holy crap, the Saints might actually win this. I mean, Alvin Kamara, Tennessee guy, go Vols, beat Ohio State this Saturday. Let's go. Let's get the job done. But Alvin Kamara made a ridiculous one-handed catch to help get New Orleans back into that game. Okay, the Saints benched Jake Hayner for Spencer Rattler, who that name just gives me nightmares from 2022 as a Vols fan. Don't ask. But Spencer Rattler, the run game, they kind of get back in this game. And if they convert a 2-point conversion, they upset Washington. So Commanders getting out of Dodge by the skin of their teeth. And by the way, they should have won anyway because there was an officiating error that gave the Saints the last chance to even have a chance to tie the game. Bad officiating mistake. Should not have happened. Washington was the better team in that game, but weird game for sure. Talking about the Chiefs, the Browns, Houston and Miami. I mean, I took Miami to win this game, and my case was, hey, the Dolphins don't feel like they're out of the playoff mix. It's at least it's not in the cold weather. We all know Houston's a good team, but it's indoors, it's in a dome. You're feeling good about yourself, and you lost a game to Houston where Tua Tagovailoa throws not 1, not 2, but 3 interceptions. He had a pass rating of 60 and a QBR of 45. Miami couldn't run the football effectively. Listen, this was listen, this was probably a big mistake on my part. Obviously, it was a mistake because I took Miami and not Houston. But I've always said, man, great coaches and talented teams off a bye, hard to beat. And D'Amico Ryans had this defense ready to go. They stymied Miami for 60 minutes. Impressive win for the Dolphins, no question about that. And they are, I thought they were dead before in terms of the playoff mix. They're very much out of it now. So Houston, I feel like this team is probably one and done in the playoffs. I haven't been impressed with the Texans in like 2.5 months. But yeah, got to win the games in front of you, and they did that against Miami yesterday. What else do you have? Cardinals beat the Patriots. That was my long shot ups of the week. It didn't happen. Can't get them all right. New England's really bad. We knew this. Arizona keeps their hopes alive for the division. Don't think they're going to catch the Rams, but they're alive for the division. What else do we have? Buccaneers beat the Chargers. But actually, no, get to that game to finish because that'll be a good note to finish on Baker Mayfield and Tampa, to finish the show. Broncos beat the Colts 31-13. Now, this is the ultimate example of score is not close to how indicative. It's not close to indicative as how close this game actually was. The Colts were up 13-7 first half, and Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the best backs in the league, makes the cardinal sin that you just cannot commit as a running back or any player, any ball carrier for that matter. He's in the clear. He's going to walk it in for a touchdown. It's going to be 27. Excuse me. Bo Nix is not having his best day, to put it mildly. He threw 3 interceptions in this game. But Jonathan Taylor drops the football prior to crossing the goal line. It's a brutal turn of events. It can't happen. It drives me crazy when this happens in a football game. There was a situation with there was a play with the Bengals defense sort of did the same thing. But that was more like a bobble. That was more of a defensive player not used to having the ball in his hands. This is Jonathan Taylor. This is a guy who's led the league in rushing before. He's a great player and just has a brain fart, drops the ball prior to crossing the goal line, and really costs his Indianapolis Colts team big time because Denver goes on to a 24-0 run to close the game. I will say Bo Nix, who should be a Rookie of the Year finalist at the offensive position, had probably one of the weirdest stat lines I've ever seen. 20 of 33, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, QBR of 15, a passer rating of 61. This was, and by the way, the Colts committed another bad turnover on a broken play. Excuse me. But for as mediocre to average as Bo Nix was in this game, and he's been great over the course of the season, especially in the middle of the year. I've said it for a while throughout the course of the season. The Indianapolis is actually a pretty talented team. One of my favorite coaches quotes Bill Parcells, said, your record says you are. I always said yes and no. Like if you're 6-8, you're obviously not doing enough to win football games, but also Indianapolis has some pretty good players. Indianapolis has guys in their teams that are capable of being successful. They got Pittman. They've got, what's my man's name? Downs. They've got guys that Jonathan Taylor. Again, the brain freeze, but Jonathan Taylor's an excellent running back. They got a good old line. Defensively, they've got to upgrade in the draft. They got to draft defense this year and go heavy defense, but they've got some guys. I think Shane Steichen is one of the smartest head coaches in football. Folks, Anthony Richardson can't play the quarterback position. He can't. He can't. 17 of 38, 172 yards, and he did run for a touchdown. He's good running the football, but he cannot pass to save his life. He is Tim Tebow with better mechanics and a higher upside. I'm sorry, that's what he is. The arm strength is mind-blowing. But too often, I don't want to say too often, but so often in the NFL, we get so caught up on drafting a guy purely based on upside, when upside's got to be a part of the conversation, particularly when taking somebody in the top 5. But there's got to be a level of, yes, I see the talent. Yes, I see the arm strength. Yes, I see the mobility, but he's just not a natural thrower of the football. Indianapolis, I'm not saying they should move on this offseason because it's a weak quarterback draft, but if by the middle of next year, Anthony Richardson, because he got hurt his rookie year, if by the middle of next year, Anthony Richardson just doesn't have it going with as many weapons as the Colts have, with the coaching staff they have, they got to move on and go quarterback in 2026. That's Long projection. That's what I've got to say. Before we get out of here, Tampa Bay blowing out the Chargers 40-17 on the road in Los Angeles. Baker, touchdown maker, was amazing. 4 touchdowns, QBR of 94, passer rating of 135, 22-27, 298. Mike Evans was out of this world. Great, $159 receiving. Listen, he still has a shot, does Mike Evans, to catch that 1,000 yards, which the reason that's a big deal for Mike Evans is not just because he's a great player, but also because he has been a guy who's had 1,000 yards every year of his career through the first 10 seasons of his career to this point. So if he can go for a little over 200 yards over the last 3 games a year, he could be able to get that mark. But Tampa's rolling, Chargers got to get some offense, and the Buccaneers are rolling. But that is all the time we have for today's late night edition of Carving Up Live. We will see you guys on Wednesday, probably not live, but hopefully at the same time as usual, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. Helps the channel grow exponentially. Again, and by the way, just importantly, before we get out of here, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. We'll hopefully see you guys on Wednesday. Probably not live. We'll see. I'll give you guys updates on social media. Follow me on Instagram at Carving It Up Podcast. Please subscribe right here on the YouTube channel. Also subscribe to the Grid Network, which is the network I'm a part of. Very excited about that. We'll see you guys later. Stay safe, everybody. God bless y'all, and peace out. And I got to go to bed, folks. See, I'm going to bed. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.